You're looking at a bit of one we've already prepared earlier at this end. Yesterday we came here and did some preparation works in taping off the edges so that the material doesn't go onto the footpath or the walls. And we also laid a regulating course along this area here. It was about 50 mil of regulating that we put down. We cleared the area of any dirt and we jet washed. It's very important that the area is nice and clean before we start laying. You'll see when we start laying the product that we use our bespoke mixers that Peter talked about in his presentation, which makes the product application easier. We use specific mixers which comply with our BBA and CE marking. I'm now going to say the machinery is quiet and there's not a lot of noise, but we've just actually learnt that the machinery isn't quite as quiet, so that people can hear us speak. The mixers are easy to manoeuvre down difficult areas to access. We've got some very trained and experienced crews that are very competent. We applied a tack coat, which you can just see at the far end, still an area that has been tack coated. We applied that this morning. The Rejuvopatch process is a two-part process, so we couldn't really physically do it all in one day, and that's why we came yesterday to do some of the preparation works. We applied the first layer to regulate the areas and fill out any areas of large damage. And then we're going to come now to put the top coat on. The products can be laid in temperatures of ground temperature of +2, which means the air temperature needs to be +4. And when we mix the products, which the lads are doing over by the wagon, it's like baking a cake, and they mix all the different things together and stir it round. And then when we come to start applying it, which you're going to watch them doing in a minute, it's like painting a pretty bit of icing on top of the cake. Right now, we laid this probably about 25 minutes ago. Flame just did a little demo before you all arrived and started standing on it, and it is probably not yet quite cured enough to walk on it. It does take around about an hour to be able to traffic it depending on the ambient temperatures.
Right, it will take a foot now. The water's coming out. That's quite. We would at this time like to get some traffic on it, really, and the more it gets traffic, the better it would become now at this stage. People wanted to get in and out of the properties. They were quite safe to do so now, with caution, and we'd encourage them to come out with the vehicles to bed it in. As you can see, there are slight joins that would disappear with the traffic as it got trafficked. If we're ready, I'll proceed with the demonstration. Please ask any questions as we go along. I'll go on there, and literally water. It's just literally water. The water is only put in there to enhance the matrix mixing of the stone, which is coated in a chemical retardant. Because it's an igneous rock, it's important that all the stone is coated. The water enhances that, and that's the water's job, really. Once the bitumen's added to the process, the retarder instantly starts to work, holding it back. But as you'll see when they start to lay it, it'll break pretty quick, and they'll probably just manage to get the texture with the brush, because the water has failed to do what it's doing anymore, and the retardant is now stopping, and so it gradually will go off. But as you've seen, the residue then is just water. Laid at certain depths. Yesterday when we did the regulating of 20-30 mil, that would have been a lot longer. The process would have taken a lot longer to go off, and that's when you try to protect it from any traffic. However, because it's having another coat on top, it's irrelevant how much traffic it takes. Right, you can hence the term slurry seal. Why? It's because of its appearance more than anything. And the depth is achieved. We're only looking for a nominal 10 mil at this stage. To acquire any higher than 10 mil hand applied at this stage would be quite difficult and probably impossible. and that is down to the experience of the crew laying the product and his naked eye. We have opened this up to bus routes on the same day. Obviously, if I was aware of that, I would hold it back 2 or 3 hours longer than I would normally. For a standard family car to come out of its drive, I would say within 1 hour they can turn the steering on it. Yeah, I'm quite happy with an hour. I mean, this is 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Before you all go, please come again. And this is the earliest process we laid today. So have a look at it, you know, and see what you think. You'll probably find it's more durable than you think, yeah. But obviously a power steering now would damage it right now. I mean, I could damage it with my foot if I turn, but as I said, the sooner we get it open to traffic, and it gets trafficked constantly. I wouldn't like to bring one vehicle on here now because you'd see it. But if I brought 15 or 20 through, you'd soon realise it was holding.
Would it not be an advantage to use a rubber roller on it?
No, we've tried putting rollers on it, but because the micro asphalt has bonded with each different cell has bonded, you put a roller on there, you break the seal because it's still in a soft thing, and it just pushes the water out and creates an unearthly sight of a colour. So we let the water come out on its own. Because it's micro asphalt, it doesn't need compressing, whereas your average 6mm overlay needs pushing down to get the bind. This is already sealed within the. If I put a roller on here now, all you would see is the water come out, and you'd lose a bit of colour. That's right. It's an irrelevant process. I would be quite confident now to walk to them and back on what we did earlier now, especially now the sun's on it, without any damage or bringing any residue back with me. We can regulate anything on more than one layer, but then the cost implications come in, and everything's doable with this process, with providing the cost is right. It gets to a stage where it becomes unviable because you're laying too much of the stuff. I've had experiences when we've actually put shuttering up and laid up to 2-inch shuttering, which is great, but the viability of that was just a little bit. The idea is to get something down as a preventative maintenance that's going to last, you know. This is the average spread they're going to get now, which you see is quite a considerably bit more than what they've just laid, and that turnover is about right. Any longer, and you would see the join even more relevant now. You can see what we did 20 minutes ago is slightly different, but again, with traffic in, that will blend in and you won't see it.
So are you varying the mix as the conditions change?
Yes, and that's literally down to the operatives to monitor. Every time they're doing a mix, they're monitoring the temperature change, so they would then adjust the retardant levels or water. The bitumen levels and the aggregate levels remain the same, irrespective of what conditions are. All we would change is the water and the retarder. Up the retarder, obviously, if the temperatures start to go up and lower. The water is just an aid to get the matrix prior to putting the bitumen in.
So you're relying on the skill of the staff to understand the conditions?
It's very important that we have at least 2 of the 3 or 4 men on there that's experienced to know what's what. And they would base their first on instinct on the first mix and then adjust from there.
Yeah.
So the first mix on any of this process is on his previous day's adjustment, and then he then adjusts accordingly. We don't advise it goes on top of concrete. However, we can lay on top of concrete because concrete's not as porous as used aggregate, used asphalt as I put it. Then it tends to repel it slightly. So we would do it, but we would tack coat that area quite heavily with a
coat to that, or
a different tack coat. We'd use a K140 tack coat and complete the concrete, which will assist in its adherence to it. But the 2 things it struggles to stick to, one is concrete, and the other one is thermoplastic. If you're going to have it on your carriageways, you'd have to take your old thermoplastic up to relay it. New thermoplastic lays lovely on it, but it won't lay on top of old thermoplastic because it repels it. And the secret of the micro asphalt is to contact and fill the voids, and that's what makes it strong. It fills the voids. If you just put fly tipping, fly patching with a 6mm aggregate, it'll fill the hole, but there'll be holes in there and gaps and everything. With this, if you drop it into a hole, every little void is covered, and so for that reason, they're the only two things that I won't lay on it with ease. Is concrete and thermoplastic. And you just have to cast your mind back. It's a bit like Blue Peter. It's one we did earlier, but if you cast your mind back to those photographs on the talks of what it actually did look like here, and that was genuinely yesterday. We just wouldn't have been possible for us to show you that in one day today. Not to give it its best shot.
Sunny at the moment and cloudy. What if it starts to rain?
Well, we would stop. We would stop basically. Simply because well, a light drizzle would probably persist, but keep an eye. But once we get any quantity of rain, average, this is England, so we get that, then we would stop, because it is a water product, and until it cures, it's vulnerable and it would dilute. And what you tend to get, you probably wouldn't lose much strength, but you would tend to get a lighter colour, and it's just not aesthetically as nice. You get the greys and the browns coming in. The strength is probably still there, but it's diluted the top coat of the bitumen, so we stop. All but one of our crews. In that case, I would probably think about increasing the polymer content to give it a little bit more tenacity. It will take the skid resistance of that. When we do footpaths and you come to the cambers of each driveway, we normally include a polymer latex to it, to give it that little bit more strength. The PSV on it and everything is skid resistance is fine. He puts his water in first. Obviously, too much dry stone, the machine will be under quite some stress. So he's put his water and the retarder in, and then I would think they're putting the 4mm to dust in first. That gives him a nice porridgey matrix. The measures are all quite precise. The measures on the retarder, it can vary. As little as 50 mils can swing it totally, so it becomes either too wet and it runs all over the place and separates, or 50 mils less and he would have a brick and he wouldn't be able to work it. So it's very important it gets the retardant levels quite right. That's been mixing now, and he's now applying his bitumen. The bitumen levels are I believe it's 7.5 litres per 34 kilograms. So they've done the measures, the amount of kilograms they're putting in, the bitumen levels, and they should never change. That is the basic. The only two things that should change is the water and the retarder, because both of them are aids and not. We also put a little bit of cement in there, which helps with the oxidisation. 2 men up there waiting, the man's delivering, the guy on the mix is now preparing his next mix. And he will be, once they've acquired the consistency, that is just repetitious. Everything, you know, the man on the brush, if he thinks it's stiffening up, the message will come back up 10 mil, or up half a litre of water or something like that. His experience on the brush is important, and this experience of the man here at this end